What's going on? I just thought I'd show you one of the ways that I fish extensions down a tube that's provided by the manufacturers. With Skywing, all the extensions are in there, but with Extreme Flight, they just give you the tube. Like I said, the tube's got no grommets on the end. I don't know if you could see that on there or not. Let's see. Can't quite get it to the right place. For you to see that it has no grommets. There it is, but can't really see. So yeah, so what you want to do is, fish something through. I mean, you could try fishing all three extensions through there. You might even get them through. It's so big. So that could be one way. Just stuff them in there and they probably come out the back. That might that might be your best choice. And then with the smaller tubes that we've always had, like I said, this tube is pretty darn big. It's typical to get a string and put a nut on it, a heavy nut, and then tilt the plane up sideways, so that gravity will pull the nut down through. And what I tend to do on all these, small, weird, like this one's kind of hard to get to and everything, I just use string, and then I use a little blower tool. It's like a couple bucks on Amazon. I use it for a lot of things, and I just take and blow the strings through. I do it right now, but it's noisy. But yeah, it just takes a second to blow it through. But it's funny, I chose to show you this little trick, and now I'm looking at, look at how big that thing is. Look at the relation to my finger. That thing's really fat. I could have probably just stuffed the servos extensions through, all three of them. Of course, sometimes they're four. Even four probably stuff right through. But this message still has validity. this video, because you can use this trick in another tube with the string at a different time when it's not so big and not so easy. So that's it. I'll try to combine this with some other little tip and trick videos along the way. So this won't be up until I get some more. All right, out. What's happening, guys? Some cool things. I think when I unboxed this, I showed this plastic template that they give you to mark for the cow. So that's pretty nice. You can get it just where you want it. Make sure you got it right, and then once you're sure you got it right, then you can throw it on the actual cow. So there's a lot of cool things about that to me. This is Lexan, so and it's thin. So I was able to cut that with Dubro hobby scissors, like super easy. So no fiberglass, like I hate fiberglass. And unlike most of these planes, you have to cut this out, which is no big deal, like quick Dremel whack and this thing's out, but that's more fiberglass dust. And they've got that cut out for me. So maybe a minor deal to somebody or even them, but a major deal for me. So I've only got to cut out those two small holes. Those two small exit holes is all I have to cut out. So pretty darn stoked on that. So that's a nice feature. I think I did talk about it in the unboxing, but I didn't talk about how this exit hole was cut. And then they have a screen. Keep them bugs out of that air intake. And that air intake is very important. It's not just for looks to match scale. That's what keeps the carb cool. Keeps you from having the gas too hot at the carb. Keeping your engine from wanting to restart when it's warm. Because the carb got too warm in the flight. And so, yeah, it's important to keep the carb cool because gas boils at a very low temp. Compared to water, it boils between like 100 and 140 degrees. That's like the actual place where it's not just like it boils at 110. So you can get vapor locked. You can have a hard time restarting, things of that nature. So it's good to keep that carb cool. It actually gets worse like with my DA200, those carbs, the engine was totally well within temp, but the Cowl, the 125-inch laser from Extreme Flight, it was solid. There was no air intake. on it. So those carbs were getting 140, 145. I started temping them. And those were actually like starting to make the engine chug after like 3 minutes of flying and cut out, shut off. So, yeah, dead stick. Not good. And then, yeah, I figured it out and cut me just like a 1-inch round hole in that cowl, and the air blew across the carbs, kept them under 100 degrees, and engine ran perfect. Little mystery solved. So this scale opening is important, that it be open, because you want to keep your carb cool, and you don't have to have a screen or mesh, or some even have foam, like a real light foam that the air can get through. But it's nice to keep the bugs out. And this has a nice screen mesh. Oh yeah, you can see through there pretty nicely. So you can see that's a nice screen. Yeah, minor things, but yeah, kind of cool little improvements. They did a lot of little improvements on this plane, so I am appreciative. All right, out. What's going on? You guys have seen me talk about this engine and throttle servo installs before, but I thought I'd go over a couple little things, and I made a little boo-boo this time. So I'd show you that too. So what I'll always do, the spring on the throttle that holds it closed for like a chainsaw or weed whacker, I always relieve that spring so there's no spring tension holding the throttle closed, but the spring tension is still there to hold the butterfly from bouncing around, which desert aircraft is always recommended. So yeah, did that, and then used a Dubro clevis for the choke, which is typically always do, and I use a Dubro 256 clevis and 256 push rod from Dubro. And then, see, I'm keeping the phone down here so you don't see this. It's rare that I, see how mucked up that is? It's rare that, very rare that I ever cut the stacks on the stock mufflers. I'll just cut some big old holes, I'll just elongate the holes quite a bit, and get the stock ones in. But this one's kind of being a little bit of a pain, and I could have elongated them more and stuff. And I go, well, it's not so bad to cut them, so it's just a thing with me to never cut them. But, I do on occasion when the cowl's really sloped. And, yeah, for whatever reason, I decided to do it. Sometimes I just decide to do something different. Oh, which brings me to why this one's mucked up. So usually what I've always cut these with in the past is just a Dremel cutoff wheel, metal cutoff wheel. And, I mean, it just cuts like butter. It just cuts right off. But for whatever reason, I was sitting here wanting to cut 3/8 of an inch off of this one. This was the first one I did. And I guess I just didn't have the Dremel in my hand. And I saw the belt sander. And I'm like, I wonder if it's so soft, if it would, and it is, that was the problem. If it would sand that down. And it did. It started just like knocking 1/8 off, 1/4 off, 3/8 off. It was a little crooked. And then I tilted a little bit. And then it grabbed an edge and like bent the whole thing up into like a corkscrew. Like, it is so soft. I'm like, really? From a belt sander? No wonder they look so bad when we have a, like a hard landing crash thing, where we just hit the stack a little bit. It looks like you totally mangled the whole motor and stuff. And it just, you can actually like just take your fingers right now. I could just squeeze, and I will squeeze this out around. So I didn't realize that. So then I got to always keep this bucket of pipes for doing various things like sanding wing tubes and stuff that are often. So it turns out that a 1-inch rigid conduit for electrical, that's 1.125" OD, which is the ID, pretty much the ID on the stack. So yeah, on this side it's perfectly clean, so see, it drops all the way in, and see there's just a little bit of wiggle. So 1.125" is pretty close to 1.125". So I was able to get this thing in there and get this thing relatively round again. So just looks a little bit mucked up right there, but once the cowl's on and get, some smoke on it, and yeah, nobody will ever notice. So that was, I've never talked about cutting these things before because, like I said, I rarely do. But I have cut them several times in the past with these cutoff wheels, and I cut these with these cutoff wheels, and it's super quick and easy. So whatever you do, don't use belt sander. Then, yeah, the rest is my normal way. I really like this clamp, because this fuel line can't move back and forth at all. And since it can't move, it can't pop off. And it also keeps it from hitting the muffler. So I always like that system. I always like this spot-on RC mount. And then I like to use machine bolts. Yeah, you can see the machine nuts. And put the bolt head on the other side with a washer. And both these sides are totally smooth, and unlikely to be able to cut any kind of wire. Not that any wires would be around here, but, maybe on the inside. But the inside's really smooth. So it's just to keep the wires from cutting. And, when you use bolts, a through bolt like that versus a wood screw, even with CA and stuff, less likely to, impossible for it to come off the motor box, whereas the wood screw, it could. I had it happen 2 years ago, and I was in there pretty solid. I had a wood mount that came stock with the plane, and then I had wood screws, and I had CA, and it still came loose. So, yeah, this is a good setup that I like. I like to make a long slotted grommet, it's a round grommet, but I make a, elongated hole instead of round. And then that way it's got a taper, to go through, instead of having a sharp angle down, a sharp angle back, where it could eventually kink or something as it gets old, it goes through at a really shallow angle, just a little bit of an angle instead of at 90. And then I take on that rubber grommet. You can kind of see I take an X-Acto and I taper this side that the line hits, and then on the inside I taper the opposite side on the inside so that there's no sharp edges even on the rubber to rubber. Oh yeah, one more thing I was thinking to tell you and all this stuff is I always back these screws out. These screws are a tapped out hole, and these always have a thimble shaped metal inside. These are for the smoke oil to go in, and then that thimble has like 3 or 4 holes, little tiny holes to spray the smoke oil, so it works really well. They get good smoke. In the latest video of me smoking the Orange NG at the Hemet event, I was only coming out of one muffler, so there's not that much smoke. But if you look at prior videos, like going back last year at the Hemet event, I smoked it up with the Edge, and you can see it's just billowing smoke. And it's these mufflers, they're pretty well set up for smoke. They're pretty cool. But so that's the long story. Short story is, if you're never going to use smoke, it doesn't matter how you seal these things. Also, it doesn't matter if you do seal them, they just leak and it won't hurt your performance, but you'll have oil leaked all over here, burnt on. So I always use Honda Bond. Like, I seal the mufflers down with Honda Bond. I use Honda Bond on these too. So I take the screw out, put Honda Bond, but I only put it on the screw side. That's kind of the point of all this conversation. I only put it on the threads of the bolt. I don't put it inside, because if anything, as I'm putting it in, I want the Honda Bond to seal it, to be pushed back out. I don't want it to be pushed in. So I don't want it on the female threads and then shoving it in, because I don't want any of it to get inside that thimble, inside the muffler, inside that thimble with the holes for the smoke. Because if and when, and usually with me it's when, I put smoke oil on this and I take the screw out, I don't want any of that to be clogged. So if any of you guys ever did put smoke on a plane that you already had sealed one of these up and it didn't smoke that good, could be that those are clogged. And there's ways to deal with that too. I mean, you can actually just drill a hole all the way through, through the thimble, and then the smoke oil will get in, but it won't spray, the same way, 3 different directions out tiny holes. So, there's always a way to skin the cat, but it's pretty nice stock setup. So that's just a little tip on those. Probably nobody needs that tip, but there you have it. So yeah, I got vent line, carb line, mufflers on, cowls cut on the other side. I even cut the cowl for the choke arm and also for the needles, so I don't have to do any more cowl cutting work. Yeah, and the only servo I got going, well, the throttle servo's all in the radio. That's it. 110 on a Free Sky radio, which is pretty comparable to like 120 on a, that's the endpoints, you know, on a Futaba. So it's really about the maximum resolution that you would want. You know, anymore you start to get too non-linear. So it's really ideal, tons of resolution, and it's real even. So it should be pretty even, but you know, if the motor wants a little more of a curve, like sometimes they want a, you know, a little smoother at the bottom, you know, a little more gradual at the bottom and a little more advanced at the top, because the top, sometimes on these motors with these Walbro carbs, the top half doesn't, you know, you move the stick from center all the way to the top and you don't change a lot of RPMs, but you move the stick from idle to midpoint, you know, from the low stick to the midpoint stick on your radio, and you get like most of the R's. So I like to start out with it even. I don't like to try to do it too much with the linkage. You can totally put a curve in with the linkage, or even with the radio, you know, but I try not to do that. I try to get the mechanically, I want it pretty center, like this one is, you know, 110. And then from there, you know, if I do a curve with the radio, it's not drastic. You know, the radio's not having to try to get to a position that's totally parabolic, you know, totally in a big curve from where it needs to be. I want it to be, yeah, somewhat just close to where it would be mechanically. So that always works for me. Now I'm babbling. Yeah, so now I get back on the wings. Wings are basically not done because I'm changing the servos in the wings, so they're not done. Stabs are not done. Tanks are not done. But I think I got, like, all the hard stuff is done. So I think a couple more nights on this thing. We got rain for a few days, but there'll be breaks in the rain too. I wouldn't be surprised if I fly this like Wednesday or something like that. We shall see. Okay, out. What's going on? Making a little bit of progress. Did the motor box and ignition the way that I always do. Nothing new there. Got my Dubro 1/8 inch large Tygon for the vent line and even the carb line. Sometimes I'll do that with the Viton as well. Having less of a preference about that last year or two, mostly because of that clamp I showed you guys that goes to the carb, so you never have to worry about the Tygon, you know, getting hard and then falling off, or soft and falling off, you know. Viton's better material, but it's way expensive. And yeah, for the vent line, I think even if you do the clamp, you know, even for the carb line, it's good. But I got Viton on the pickup carb line in the tank. That's where it's most critical to me. Oh yeah, then I usually use cable ties, 18-pound cable ties like these, on each side of the pickup line in the tank. But decided to try some Dubro medium fuel line clips. And then I clipped they have tips on them, metal tips. One of them's rounded. You can kind of see it there. I don't know if you can see it very well, but one of them's rounded and the other one's spiky. You can kind of see it there if you look real hard. And then, you know, one of them's bare tips that could scratch, and the other side's kind of roundy, which couldn't scratch. But what I ended up doing, I left this side alone. Can't really see it. No, you can't really see it there. But, you know, it's in the cap, so it doesn't matter. And then this side's going to be hitting the tank and scratching it and stuff, potentially. I mean, I don't know. So I took and clipped all those wires off, even the roundy one. Even though the roundy won't scratch it, you know, kind of stuck up a little bit. So kind of keep the clunk off it potentially could keep the clunk just like a tiny 1/16 of an inch or something off the tank. Doubtful, but anyway, I'm OCD. So anyway, I just clipped all 4 of those. You can see their little tits now. So they don't hit the tank and they don't elevate the clunk. So anyway, yeah, I'm always just trying new things. On this plane, I've tried several new little techniques. Like I told you guys, I belt sanded that and it got all bent. See, it looks fine on here now that you don't even notice. But that was dumb. Yeah, definitely use your Dremel or whatever you usually do. I'm not, I don't cut them very often, like I was saying in the other video, but the Dremel, it goes through like butter, and there's no reason to use a belt sander on those. They're too soft. It's like belt sanding like a wet piece of spaghetti or something. It's just not a good idea. So yeah, did a couple different things along the way, and that, always takes more time. I have a routine for this stuff, but, I get to always wanting to try things. And usually it ends up wasting a bunch of time. I concealed almost all the wires this time underneath, the structure, and wrapped almost all of them with polyester sheath. That takes more time too, and just decided to do it for some reason. I did it in different colors, so I knew where they were coming from too. Like this one, that's the throttle servo. Then that red one, that's the ignition, through the IBEC. And then these other blue ones down here, they're all from the tail. And then I ran these like I was showing you, I ran these multiplex type connectors for the wings. So I'll be doing that this time, the plug in for those. And yeah, get that all sorted. So there's not going to be too many wires hanging out. Usually I have like a maze of wires. I don't care. I just put them all on top. I got my pink foam for the batteries. That's this thickness, like a 1/4 inch. Got my self-adhesive pink foam that's 1/8 of an inch for the bottom of the tank. And got my pink boba straw. So pretty dialed. Now I did hold back a little bit because I got what I thought would be super cool. I got pink glitter, but then I was like, man, this is too much, so you guys can respect me for that. I did stay with the plain pink. Yeah, that was kind of it on this stuff. Got some work to do to get finished. But then one of the guys asked me about taking off the rudder for transport, and Extreme Flight makes it easier than Skywing. With Extreme Flight, you got a threaded screw in the top. There we go. You can pretty much see that threaded screw. And so you just, unthread that with a screwdriver, pull the hinge pin out, and then you have to take off the servo connection in one place or the other. You either can take it apart, take the bolt out through the control horn, which I wouldn't want to do because I got those little washers in there. And, most people do run, that's kind of the standard thing with Extreme Flight, to run a little washer on each side. And that'd be too fiddly at the field. And then, the way I do my bolts, the way that some guys do their push rod bolts, I wouldn't be surprised if most people put the push rod on the outside. Then that'd be pretty easy to take it off there. And then you want to Loctite it back on. But since I put mine the opposite way, it'd be hard for me to get that bolt out. So for me, I'd take this hinge pin out, and then I would take the servo arm off the servo. So that's 2 bolts. And then you'd have to Loctite those 2 bolts back on. Plus you'd have to, if you really wanted to be sure about it, chances are nothing's going to move, but if you wanted to be sure, especially if you're push-pull, then you'd want to put the rudder back on at the field, line it up in the center position, and then turn your radio on and make sure that your servo is centered, because the radio's on and it's found its center. And then you could put the servo arm back on and you'd be sure that it was at the center up here, and then put in your 2 bolts. So I don't know if that sounds like a lot, but it's actually not. I guess, you're talking like 3 minutes, but like 5 minutes max. you know, and if that makes a difference between getting it to the field or not, or getting in the vehicle you want or not, that's not bad. I always talk about the guy I used to fly with back in the day, Chris Summy. Anything went wrong, we say you're out summied. You out summied yourself. But anyway, he used to bring a third scale cap 232. He used to bring it in his Corvette. So, but he would take the landing gear off, which he had, you know, he had a screw gun. So he'd do it, you know, cordless, just electric. 4 screws. He had that off, and then he would take the rudder off. You know, and he'd stuff it in there. And yeah, go to the field, and yeah, it was 10 minutes for him to, you know, get the landing gear back on, which he had down to a science, you know, and the rudder back on, but allowed him to drive around in his Corvette. So he liked that. And those Corvettes are actually big as a Camaro, and they just tricky anyway. But yeah, that's a lot of sidetrack. But kind of made this video for Dubro because I use a lot of their stuff, but I don't talk about it too much. But and like microfacers, I use so much of their stuff, and I don't talk about that very much. But yeah, I need those guys. I need their parts. And then yeah, I use stuff from Spot on RC, etc., etc. And then yeah, also for this guy that wanted to know how easy it is to get these rudders off on the Skywing. I know I'm taking a long time, but final thought on the Skywing, it doesn't, the hinge pin doesn't come out the top, it comes out from the bottom, and you're gonna have to take off the tail wheel on a Skywing to get the rudder off. So a bit more work on a Skywing, another 2 to 5 minutes depending on how quick you are. And shit, man, that's it. You can see I've got most things, but I got to finish up this tank, which I just did the pickup line, and I tightened these, like what do we call them? Not knucklehead Chris, screwball Chris. He actually took this out of one of my planes he was using for a little bit, and then put in another style tank. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, well, those always leak. And yeah, you do have to tighten these up. So tighten these up first with I can't remember the name now. I'm so bad. My memory's so bad. But we used to make these all ourselves with the water bottles, Fiji water bottles, and Fiji. I can't remember anything, and I have them up here somewhere. But there's the tops we used to use. They're over there. I can't remember these brands. It was a really cool brand, and so we got used to, you know, drilling our own holes and mounting these. But you have to tighten them up. So when you get these from Extreme Flight, these are loose. So Screwball Chris, he was talking about how, you know, his leaks sometimes. Well, yeah, tighten them up. You know, you have to tighten up the cap too. And yeah, anyway, that's a thing. But yeah, I got most everything's dialed, you know, and most things. And yeah, I don't have too much left to do on the fuse. How long? I'm really babbling now. How long? I think just a couple hours here. I'll be done today. This afternoon, I mean, on the fuselage. Ready to fly. I got to glue in, probably in trim and glue in the baffles. I do like that way better about Skywing, that the baffles are foam and they come already glued in. And you can just trim them with a pair of scissors, and it's just real quick and easy. I mean, I always complain about it with Extreme Flight, that they have the fiberglass ones that I got to glue in, and I usually glass them in. I always glass them in, so I glue them and glass them. I goo them. I goo it because it's good. I use half goo to hold them in place, and then I glass them after that. And yeah, I always complain about it and stuff, but it really just takes like half an hour or something. But yeah, it's half an hour, man. You know, I do. It's no big deal though, but I do like that. You know, Extreme Flight keeps adopting all this cool things from Skywing, like these tunnels, these foam tunnels. So maybe they'll adopt the foam baffling next too. And if they get the control horns in the right places and spread the trusses for conicals and put the foam baffling in, I'd be pretty stoked. It'd probably be hard pressed to get me to buy a Skywing plane if Extreme Flight would do that. I do love these other things that they did, with the anti-rotation pins. That's a big improvement for me for sure. Gluing in the horns, it's really nice, but we need to have them glue in the horns. We just need to have them in the right place and the right spacing. Which I'm doing an article about that on Facebook on the Joe Hunt RC Diary. I started on section 1. I'm going to do like 12 sections on the actual reality of how we're setting these, servo to surface and what would be optimal for that. But yeah, just those couple little things. But yeah, they did, like, they have this really cool tube, which they made, pretty oversized, which is nice too. Would be nice if they put a grommet on that. That's especially since it's oversized. If they put a grommet on that, which Skywing does, then you don't even have to put polyester sheath on. There's a couple other things. Skywing does a tube from the motor box to the receiver location. So your ignition wires and your throttle servo, and if you have a choke servo, all those wires can go through that tube. And it has grommets on each end, so eliminate a lot of this polyester sheath labor, which is a cool idea. But Extreme Flight, is getting close. Plus, their quality is, I have to say, and I think we've always said this, everybody and me in the videos, but the Extreme Flight quality, definitely the covering's way better. Their covering still is not as good as the old Ultra Coat and the old Monocoat from 20 years ago, but it's, I think, the best out. I think it's Aura cover, and it's the best thing you can get today. Skywing's covering is dog shit, it's just wallpaper. So that's big, and their construction is all better. I think their materials are just slightly better on everything. Like, I think their wood's better, their CNC lasering's better. Everything's a little more solid. What else was I just doing that I was noticing that their stuff is better? There's more than just that. Of course, covering and construction and the quality of the materials, is kind of everything. But there was a couple key things that I was noticing lately too, that they just, their quality is just, it's just a little bit better. But at the end of the day, too, you're going to go off of how it flies. Like if anybody's playing Pilot RC, AJ, Flex, or anybody who's playing, like, flies sicker than every other brand, you're probably going to want to get that anyway and just deal with the covering or whatever problems that the plane has. But so, Skywing can still beat out Extreme Flight on, performance. I know what the other thing is. Big thing is, big thing to me. I guess at the end of the day, none of it's that big a deal because they still fly and work. But the fiberglass and the paintwork, much, much better on Extreme Flight. So the Cowl is way nicer quality on Extreme Flight, the fiberglass and the paint. So that, if they cost I think they cost like another $100 or something on the initial retail, but then they don't include all the stuff that Skywing does. So it ends up being like a couple $100 more, but you are getting, higher quality. But still, back to that, what I just said too, I would fly the one that flew better. I would buy the one that flew better, but Extreme Flight definitely has a little better quality on, like, throughout, categorically, kind of throughout. Yeah, I do wish they would do those other couple tricks though. Control and location and spacing, grommets on the tubes, tube from the motor box to the receiver, just like Skywing. And shit, man, it'd be pretty freaking dialed at that point. Wonder what else they could do for us. I mean, like, they glue on the control horns now. Can they start putting the linkages on? And we just have to tighten them? Yeah, I think that could be done. And that's more or less done on their plug and play electrics now. I think the linkages are on. So, yeah, go all the way with it. Shit, man, I'm totally babbling now. 17 minutes. That's 17 minutes of work not done on this plane because I'm talking. So I'll get back to it. This is for Dubro and for the rudder guy. All right, out. What's going on, fellas? Well, just adding a quick note to the. Am I ever quick? To the last video. I'm gonna bunch a bunch of videos together. You already saw it. This is towards the end. The fit and finish on the wing tubes and the anti-rotation tubes, which there's two now that stick out for anti-rotation. So instead of having to push one through, you don't have to push either through, but you got two, so it's super solid. And then, oh yeah, fit and finish on the tube. I mean, the tube just slid right through the inner tube on the fuse, slid right in the wings. I've had to sand the sky wings for a day. And yeah, you know, I love my Skywing planes, and you know, a lot of my, almost all, over half of my videos are Skywing, I think. But yeah, you just gotta tell it like it is, and you know, I'd still fly Skywing forever and all that. But you know, I've had to sand a day on tubes. You know, I never sand the tube itself, you know, the carbon fiber tube, but I always sand the inner tubes and in the wings as well, to get those things to fit, you know, and covering so much worse too. But yeah, even with the anti-rotation dowels, everything just fit and finish on this it's just better, you know, and that's just facts, you know. I still may want a Skywing particular model over an Extreme Flight sometimes, you know, but, and, you know, because the way it flies and that they are plenty good enough. But these are better. And then Skywing, for some reason, they do not drill the pilot holes for the elevator servos, and I kind of hate that. I think I ordered some like really long 16th inch bits for this. I don't think they ever showed up. I think I ordered them off Amazon like a year ago, so I got to check. But that's for Skywing. But Extreme Flight, the holes are already pre-drilled. So that's a big deal to me. I've been real irritated when I put the Skywings together. I mean, not the end of the world, but it's just a lot nicer to have those things pre-drilled. It's a lot nicer not to spend a day sanding wing tubes, so that's pretty cool. And like I said, on this one, not too many wires are going to end up showing, just the IBEC wires, the only thing I didn't put underneath the trays. So it should look pretty clean when I'm all done. Got tanks and plumbing done, fuel dots and IBEC light. Shoot, not too much. Yeah, I have the left wing done. So I went ahead and, you know, after 2.5 years of doing my own thing, went with 38 up, 37 down, like the manual says. Yeah, on those. Yeah. So I have to do the other wing. I'm doing the stabs right now. And then I just got to tidy all this up and do the baffles. So probably be ready tomorrow night for a Wednesday maiden, but got some things I have to do Wednesday. So we'll see how the rain is Thursday, Friday. If there's no rain, should be able to get this pinky up. All right, out. What's going on? A little more info. Yeah, I told you already, went longer. I had to replace the stock push rods for the ailerons for longer ones. I didn't have to, sorry. I just did. And then you don't have to replace the stock ones for short ones on the elevators for shorter ones, but you kind of need to. I mean, no, it'll work and everything. It's not going to be optimal. The only way you could do it, you know, if you take the stock ones, like, I don't know, drill them out a little bit, or just really crank the ball links on. Like, I cranked them on to where, like, they're getting pretty extreme, starting to twist and everything. Like, it'd be tough to get them on any harder, you know, like they're going to break, they're going to fatigue. And they were getting pretty fatigue bent, as it was. And then I was still quite a bit short, almost a quarter inch short of where I need to be. They were still a quarter inch too long, like at least 3/16. And yeah, you can make all that work, but you don't get, it's not even. And yeah, it's just basically that's what it is. It's just not even at all. One side goes up way further and goes deeper into the slot. Like the whole thing's, it just messed up. But by either using shorter push rods, like quarter inch shorter push rods, or I don't know what you could do. I don't know if you could heat those things up and get them on there tighter, because they're hot. I've never tried that, but anyway, they needed to be like 3/16 shorter than the very tightest I felt comfortable. Like I was past the point I felt comfortable with the tightening. But if you do that, then I went with a 1 3/4 hole. So again, you're looking for mechanical advantage resolution to get your max throw. And I'm always looking for 57. You can see that thing says 0, and then that says 57, and then that says 57. That's what I normally run on all my elevators. I haven't really played with that too much in the last 2 or 3 years, because I just always run 50. I always run 57 the last 2 or 3 years, in 2.5 years, and always seems to be plenty. Imagine you could wind up a little tighter if you got more, but then you're going to have it all the time for like your other maneuvers. You might get carried away, but probably I could get more. But check it out anyway. So for resolution in the radio, yeah, let's see. Let's just go ahead and show that too. In the radio for resolution for that, and remember that on the Free Sky, you got more. Yeah, there it is right there. You got more than like Futaba. Like when Free Sky's 100, that's like Futaba, like 115 on steps. And then, so when you get like 105, that's like Futaba at like 125. That's like is about as good as you want to get it for your endpoints, and that shows you got max resolution, max mechanical advantage. So I got 98.106, call it here, rounding up. So that's 8 steps. So that's like 104. That'd be right. 6 and 2 is 8. Yeah. That only seems like 100, 104. Does that be 103, 103? Yeah, 6, 103, 103. Yeah, 103, 103. So 103, 103 is real good on Free Sky for resolution and mechanical advantage. So you have that. Let's see if I've got enough hands. I don't know if I have enough hands and knees and legs to show you what I want to show you. I'm going to drop something. Okay. I'm definitely going to drop something. Let's see. Trying to do this without breaking anything. Okay. So, yeah, okay. We want to look at that slot. I'm all sideways here. And see, I come to the end of the slot. I'm on 1 3/4 on the servo arm. That's to get the mechanical advantage and resolution. But I'm at the end of the slot on my 57, right at the very end. And I'm right at the very end of the slot here, too, on my 57. Get a good view. See, it's not hitting. But it's right at the end. Not hitting right at the end. So, you cannot worry about all these things that I worry about, and that's fine. But I have even travel. I'm even in the slot. I have my 57 even. I have the max. I have the max throw that I want, but at the same time, with the throw that I want, just what you should say, with the throw that you want, then you want max resolution and max mechanical advantage. So shortening the push rod from stock, unless you can shove that ball on there to where it's all breaking apart or something, I don't know. And then going with the 1 3/4 hole in the 2-inch servo arm, I'm able to get 57 up with max mechanical advantage and resolution. And, because the push rod length, then I'm all even. Even Steven. So I thought I'd throw that in here too. For some reason, I'm talking a lot about this plane, but it's pretty cool. It's extreme flight, and I've been building a lot of Skywings, so you just kind of notice, and I don't have I have a routine for all these. I built so many in the last couple of years, 38 now or something. But I'm always playing with little tweaks here and there, and then they keep making refinements. This plane's very refined. They call this version 3 on the paperwork. It's very refined, and so I'm always, checking out what they did and then doing little tweaks like this. Like I had this done like instantly first time, like anybody would do, and then I started going, well, that's not optimal, and then I just kept experimenting with it till I got it. Now it's optimal. But yeah, I had to shorten up the push rod length and change from the 2-inch hole to the 1 3/4 hole in the servo arm, and then I got optimal. But yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff. But I talked about it in the last video, which is attached to this video, so it's gonna sound like I just said this a minute ago. But yeah, fit and finish, real good paintwork. I mean, they're just, I'm probably overstating because I probably understated already because I keep going, well, they're real close. Maybe in a way they are, but kind of what I'm trying to say right now is really Extreme Flight's they're just next level on the quality. Yeah, and just repeating myself on that. The control horn thing, wish we'd get them wider and then laterally in the right place. All glued in like that, for conicals and better, even geometry on the servo arm where the servo arm is going 45 each direction to get the surface to go, the even direction as well, even travel as well, which I don't think, I don't think any of the planes are like that. I don't think anybody's running that but me. I just don't, I never see it. I don't see it in the setup. I don't see it in the pro videos, the elite pilot videos, online setups and things. I don't see it. Don Hamp knows how to do it. I think Juan Sanchez knows how to do it. But they even say they don't take the time to do it much anymore. So, yeah, but that could be done. What I'm trying to get at is that could be done factory. So, I think everybody's just throwing these together just as quick as they can because, with the factory setup, which gets it close now compared to the old days, 20 years ago. But the factories could set these up to where everybody could slap them together and they would be even, All they have to do is put the control horn in the right place, give you the right push rods, and then you're going to be even, so. But yeah, I'd like to see that. But I mean, I sure like seeing all this other stuff. They're really nice, everything's really nice, and the quality on the Extreme Flight. I kind of repeat myself. Guess I get OCD'd out, but just putting this one together, and I've got more time in it. Like I should be frustrated because, I've put the 916s in and took them out, put the 915s in, took them out, put the 916s back in, and then I'm doing, polyester sheaths and heat shrink on all that stuff. And that was all just a big pain. And then putting it together, the ailerons, then taking them off and putting different push rod lengths, put this elevators together and then take them apart, push different push rod lengths and all this stuff. And then belt sanding that stupid stack where I bent it and then had to fix it. You think I'd be kind of frustrated, but it's, fun to work on the Extreme Flight stuff. And the covering, I usually don't even iron it at all, for the maidens and all that. I've never had it come off. And then it'll get some wrinkles from the sun and stuff, and I'll start ironing it down. And, I'll get it ready for the smoke system. I'll iron it down some more. But the Skywing, you absolutely have to iron down. You got to spend at least 4 hours just ironing it down. That's like, everybody talks about how quick you can get them done, but you're going to spend a day ironing it down. And then it's still going to come up. It's still going to come up. With oil, it comes up first flight. With smoke oil, it'll come off the first flight, even if you've ironed it down 10 times. And then otherwise, you got to be real careful with it. Probably need to do what we do with smoke systems without smoke systems on Skywing and just use thin CA on all the ends, all the cut ends. But then, yeah, not having to sand the wing tube for a day, which I already talked about, last video. It's just nice. So, and just, yeah, everything's just a little bit nicer. I'm just totally repeating myself, but yeah, it's probably going to be the last thing on this thing is, because I said, I have 1 3/4 on the rudder, and that gets me good geometry, mechanical advantage, resolution. And then I have 1 3/4 on the elevators. And then I have 1 1/4 on the ailerons. And that worked out perfect. I set those up 38, 37. And the resolution was for they're like 101. I think they're 110, 110 or 105, 105. Anyway, they're great resolution on the free sky. And then they look right, so that's just some tidbits of information for anybody assembling one of these. It's all pretty cool. And I didn't put the smoke in. We'll see, because kind of what got me is I don't want to cut the hatch. On the hatch, the tank goes through. It's visible. It's cut through the hatch. So when you go smoke, you got to cut that cutout twice as big. And I just thought, let me fly it for a while first before I chop that all up. And I don't have to smoke this plane, for smoking demos. I got the Edge, the Extreme Flight Edge. So we'll see what happens with that. Not really rambling now, a lot of times when I'm rambling, I'm thinking there's something else I forgot to mention. But I think that's kind of the wrap up on this assembly. There's not much else going on. These tubes were just slightly tight on the stab tubes, so I just put a little bit of lube on those, the dry lube, the dry graphite lube on those babies, and then they worked really good. Like I told you, the wings and anti-rotation were real nice right out of the box. Shit, man, I'm just stalling right now. Yeah, that's about it. I think this plane is wrapped up. All right, out.